Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of GOAT Movies, the podcast for the simple movie lover, where we discuss movies we've recently seen and see if they have what it takes to become the next greatest of all time. What makes a GOAT movie? Is it quotable? Is it lovable? Is it any-able? You'll find that out today and more. Your mission today, should you choose to accept it, is to listen to this full podcast as we review Mission Impossible Fallout. On today's show, we've got my buddy Nick and his wife Marion. Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's going on, Carlos?
Hi, Carlos.
It's so good to have you guys back. It's starting to turn into GOAT Movies with the Grecos.
The pleasure is all ours, Carlos. We're happy to be here.
I'm so glad that...
This is my first time on. I'm just here to keep Nick in check.
Oh, well, at least somebody is able to do that because I've tried for years and just, it's not happening.
It takes a woman's touch. You almost have it, though.
Almost. Thank you. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to get to know you a little bit better, Marion. How did you meet Nick? What kind of movies are you into?
Nick and I met in Utah through a mutual friend and got married, 2 years later? And he dragged me down to Texas. Texas isn't bad. Don't mind it down here. Type of movies I'm into. I kind of appreciate all movies. Like, I don't have a preferred genre, I guess. I'm down to be entertained no matter what.
Awesome. And do you have any outstanding movies or a movie that, just stands out? When I say what's your favorite movie of all time, what's the first one that comes to mind?
Oh, for years I was like a huge Wes Anderson fan and loved Bottle Rocket, which is like one of his first ones, but I'm kind of over the Wes Anderson train, and so I don't know what my new favorite movie would be. Meet Joe Black is a classic.
That is a very good classic with Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins.
Very good movie. Nick, I don't think I ever asked you, what's one of your favorite movies?
One of my historic favorite movies is always Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I swear you were going to say Wedding Crashers.
I do love Wedding Crashers.
Ferris Bueller, that's a great classic. I mean, those 80s films, those movies, they just hold a special place in everybody's heart, I feel. And I feel like our generation is fortunate enough to be right in the middle, where we caught the butt end of those and got everything new that's coming up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this, like, musically, how in 20 years, will people look at Chainsmokers and think, man, that was such a great band, the way that we look at bands from the 80s or 90s? And kind of the same thing with movies. Like, what movies in 20 years are people going to be like, man, that was a great movie?
Wedding Crashers.
Oh, if only we had a podcast or something that would let us know what type of movies would stand the test of time. I don't know.
If only there was a podcast for the simple movie lover.
I know, right? Well, on today's show, like we were saying earlier, we're going to be reviewing Mission Impossible Fallout, starring Tom Cruise. Yet another impossible mission for him to overcome. What did you guys think about the movie?
I think that the only thing that's impossible is for Tom Cruise to age.
Seriously, he's Chris Traeger.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I am just astonished that this franchise just keeps going. This is going to be movie number 6 in the entire franchise. The first movie, the whole Mission Impossible franchise is based off of a television series that was out. And the first Mission Impossible was quite a blockbuster back in 1996.
That was 1996?
That was my first movie that I went to where my friend was like, oh my gosh, Tom Cruise is in this. And I was like, oh, I have to learn who this Tom Cruise guy is. Like, that was my first movie of like figuring out what a blockbuster was, what celebrities were, that whole world. Mission Impossible opened up the world of celebrities to me.
Really? Wow. What's funny is Tom Cruise has been around for such a long time. You have Risky Business, you've got
Top Gun.
My best friend Adam, and when he got married, he asked me to be in his wedding party, and that was actually something that we performed when they start singing in the bar. We actually sang that as his groomsmen to Kelsey when they got married at the wedding. So I'm just glad that there's no video of it because we were practicing.
Before Instagram.
Right? I know, right before. It's, little blessings that I'm glad are way behind me that we never have to recreate. But what's funny is that Adam had told me about this movie Top Gun, and I said, "Oh, I've never seen it." He's like, "How have you never seen Top Gun? It's such a great movie." I'm like, I honestly, and to this day, I am not a huge Tom Cruise fan. There's something about him. I just don't. I don't vibe with him very well. The only movie that I've ever really truly loved of his is A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson. I think that's one of the greatest movies of all time. But what's funny is we were watching Top Gun with Adam, and as the movie started, I'm like, okay, this can get pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And I really started enjoying it. We were maybe about 20 minutes into the movie, and then Adam just mentions, "Can you see how crooked Tom Cruise's teeth are?" The rest of the movie was completely ruined because the entire time I would just stare at those teeth.
I've never noticed that. It's crooked teeth.
Next time,
probably fixed by now.
Oh yeah, they're definitely fixed by now. But one of his two front teeth is longer than the other in that movie, and it's just one of those things that it's just, oh my gosh, it just distracted me the entire movie. So I'm that type of person that I'm easily distracted by little things like that because of my OCD. And
OCD? Is that what we're gonna call that?
That's what I call it. Isn't that what anybody calls it these days? I mean, we gotta call it something. But anyways, like I was saying before, I've never really vibed with Tom Cruise. He's had some really, really great movies. Mission Impossible came out in 96. He had Jerry Maguire that same year. A couple years later, he did Eyes Wide Shut with Nicole Kidman.
Never saw that one.
I never saw that one either.
That was like an off-limits one for us.
Yeah, we were too young for that kind of thing.
You had to keep your eyes shut the whole time.
Yeah.
So I never saw it either. Mission Impossible 2, came out in 2000. And, it's just been kind of a roller coaster for him from there. He had Vanilla Sky in 2001.
I liked Vanilla Sky only because I thought Penelope Cruz was super hot.
I liked Vanilla Sky because I thought it was a good movie.
I was completely and totally confused the entire time. I had no idea what the movie was about. To this day, I could probably watch it again and still not understand what it was. But, some of my favorite movies from Tom Cruise, Minority Report was pretty good. The Last Samurai was pretty good.
What about that one with the aliens and the world was ending? Am I describing
where he wears the Yankee hat during the movie? That's
the only reason that you like that one, and you know it. War of the Worlds, where
War of the Worlds.
See, I think he had a good run until he went on Oprah and was jumping on the couch and was yelling about Scientology, and he was all crazy with Katie Holmes. Up until that point, he was pretty normal. And then it was like around the third Mission Impossible that he got kind of weird, and the mission movies got really cheesy, and I kind of stopped being into Tom Cruise until actually this movie kind of saved him for me.
I know that I've seen every Mission Impossible movie, but I remember none of them.
I think I skipped 3 and 5.
The only thing I remember is the first one when they're in the elevator shaft and he falls and he's harnessed in.
That's not in the elevator shaft.
That's not him. That's Emilio Estevez.
Emilio!
No,
he's talking about the scene in the office when they have like a weight sensor in the whole room.
I remember he falls down.
He's in the CIA headquarters in the computer room.
The cutting edge, what do you call it?
Technology.
Stunts. The cutting edge technology and stunts of the time, like that he was harnessed in and did his own stunts. And then look what he's doing, jumping out of airplanes and hanging from helicopters and flying his own helicopters. Like, he's crazy.
I've actually been watching a lot of interviews with a lot of his co-stars, like Henry Cavill and Simon Pegg, and they've all been getting asked the same question where, do you feel kind of intimidated that, Tom Cruise did all of his stunts and you guys are having stuntmen do his? I just don't understand how somebody can ask Henry Cavill that when Henry Cavill is, 6 feet tall? He's an enormous man. He's huge. But Tom Cruise, for sure, he's insane, especially based on some of the clips that we've seen from the trailers. Those stunts that he's doing himself, I'm astonished that they even allowed him to do that.
Well, that's with Henry Cavill. Like, he wanted to do all his stunts because Tom Cruise was doing his. But because Tom Cruise has been doing his own stunts for so long and he's trained in all these really intense stunts, like Henry Cavill wasn't prepared, so he couldn't. It was too dangerous. His body couldn't even do it.
Yeah, we watched some of the preview stuff and some of the making of with my little brother he showed us. And
we watched the B-roll.
I'll say that going into the movie, knowing that he did all of his own stunts, I think made the movie more exciting.
Oh, for sure. We're watching like race scenes. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Because we know that he drove his own cars, drove his own motorcycle. You know, like that was actually him. That made it way more intense.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get our rating system out of the way, and we'll talk about a little bit about what we liked about the movie. After which, we're actually going to try a little new format. After we play the trailer, we're going to issue our spoiler alert, and then we are going to just talk about basically our favorite clips of the movies rather than going from start to finish for each movie. Basically with the idea that if you wanted to see the rest of the movie, you saw it, so there's really no need for us to tell you from start to finish how it went. But we will talk about some of the plot points that we enjoyed, some of them that we didn't like. So let's go ahead and get started with this new format for GOAT movies. Nick and Marion, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is absolutely horrible, not worth your time to bootleg, 10 is the absolutely best movie you've ever seen. You're going to see it multiple times in a theater. You have 0.5 to give to this movie. Where do you rank Mission Impossible Fallout?
Ladies first?
Ladies first, Carlos.
So, which lady? Carlos or me? So I would give it a 7.5. It kind of saved Tom Cruise's reputation for me. I really enjoyed the movie, but it was still predictable enough. There were the classic mission things, with the masks and the things that I could predict, and I knew when people were going to be swapped or, so it wasn't a total 10 because it wasn't totally surprising for me, but it was entertaining. And the stunts alone, that was so cool. So I would say a solid 7.5.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you, Nick?
For me, it was an 8.5. I really enjoyed it. We accidentally bought tickets for like the Dolby Super Sound System theater. And so like our chairs are shaking and the sound was great. Yeah, I think that the storyline was I don't think it has to have a great storyline. Like the action is intense, and I'm going to stick with 8.5.
8.5. Wow, that's a pretty high score for you on the movies that we've reviewed so far. So I actually am torn between an 8 and an 8.5. I'm leaning more towards an 8. But I think based on our conversations throughout this podcast, I may be swayed to give it that 0.5 extra. All right, let's just go ahead and play the trailer for Mission Impossible Fallout, after which we'll go ahead and issue our spoiler alert. And then we can go ahead and discuss a little bit more in detail about what we really thought about Mission Impossible Fallout.
Your mission. Should you choose to accept it, I wonder, did you ever choose not to? The end you always feared is coming. And the blood will be on your hands. The fallout of all your good intentions.
You had a terrible choice to make in Berlin. One life over millions. And now the world is at risk.
This is the CIA's mission. If he had held on to the plutonium, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
His team would be dead.
Yes, they would. That's the job.
Get down with the victims. We both know you need them. Stuck in the middle of all irrelevance.
You don't understand what you're involved in.
You need to walk away.
Please don't make me go through you.
How many times has Hunt's government betrayed him, disavowed him, cast him aside? How long before a man like that has had enough?
You can't fight the friction. So you can't take the pressure. So
Ethan, that's not who we are.
Maybe we need to reconsider that.
you can't fight the friction.
So, how is he?
Oh, same old Ethan.
What the hell is he doing?
I find it best not to look.
All right, there you have it. The trailer for Mission Impossible Fallout. The movie is about 2 hours long. All of the original cast is still there, PG-13. Now in theaters, let's go ahead and issue our spoiler alert.
Red alert.
If you haven't seen the movie, you can go ahead and pause the podcast right now because anything after this point is completely fair game. So let's just go ahead and get started. Our new kind of format here, rather than just really talking the movie from start to finish, I just really want to get your insights, a little things that popped out to you, things that you want to discuss. Obviously, we'll start with the very beginning, how it opens. You know, we open on Tom Cruise, and he is with Julia, his wife or ex-wife. I'm not too sure on how that dynamic is working. Like Marion, I really haven't seen all of the Mission Impossibles in sequential order.
I think she's his ex-wife because she's remarried.
She is remarried at the very end of the movie, yeah.
So it's got to be ex.
But he didn't really divorce her. He's just kind of hidden her because of his lifestyle in this IMF, correct?
Yeah.
That's what I think. I couldn't really remember. I knew that I remembered her in the other movies, but I couldn't remember exactly what had happened or where it left off. But you get that sense right off the bat that like there was a shakedown and something happened and he like kind of comes out of it panicky, but I could not remember exactly where it left off.
Well, I think it sets the tone for what Luther's saying later, that like he can't do mission when he's with her. He's always so worried about if she's okay. You know, so you get the movie starts off with you realizing his love for her and his concern for her safety.
So for being quite an action-packed movie, it's actually kind of a love story for the whole thing because it's all about Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt's love for Julia. And
but also his we kind of reveal the love for the new girl.
Oh, Ilsa Faust.
Ilsa.
I love Ilsa. I think she is gorgeous. But
she's got crazy eyes.
Really? You think so?
She has like almost a lazy eye.
I just thought it's so funny that, you know, for such interesting looking women, they look so similar. Because when they first showed the picture of Julia, I thought they were showing the picture of Ilsa. And then when they revealed, I was like, oh yeah, she's still alive somewhere. But I don't know. I just always think it's funny when they cast people to look so similar when it's a very defined role.
Well, maybe that's just what Ethan is into. You know,
He's
that's
into those
his
weird
bag,
shaped
baby.
eye girls with brown hair.
And his crooked teeth.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if at the very beginning, if she had like was killed in one of the other movies and this is kind of like a flashback or what.
Well, I remember that in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, that's when Jeremy Renner kind of joined this whole IMF league. He was tasked with following them, and he said that she was dead, and that Ethan was the one that had killed her, or that somebody had killed her while Ethan was on a run or something like that. But this was all kind of Ethan's way of hiding Julia so that she was protected from all of this. And Luther makes reference to it in the movie that she is in hiding and she's pretty good. He taught her everything she knows, Luther did. Mm-hmm. And every so often she'll send up a smoke signal or something to let Ethan know that she's okay and that she's still thinking about him. So she's kind of moved on with her life because she knows that her and Ethan can never be together because of his lifestyle. And she respects him for it. She understands that he is truly out there saving the world. And I saw a lot of imagery, kind of like Schindler's List almost, where you're not saving the world, you're saving that one person. Ethan Hunt couldn't care less about everybody else in the world and all these innocent people dying. He's trying to save Julia. He's trying to make this world a better place for Julia. And really that's really the answer in all these superhero movies. They're not really doing it for everybody else. They're doing it for that one true love. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I think you also kind of see that in one of the scenes where they're trying to steal the plutonium from those guys, and it's not necessarily for Julia, but he like chooses to save his team over
that's kind of the
getting
theme
the
of
plutonium.
The movie, that he is the value of one life is more important than many.
Well, I mean, that is a common theme that we see in cinema. You know, one of the most memorable quotes is from Schindler's List, where they say, "Whosoever saves one life saves the world entire." And you also see it a lot in all of the Star Trek movies, you know, where, you know, I know Schindler's List is a real movie and, real person and everything, but you take into consideration something fictional like Star Trek, where it's still the same theme. The needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many. Or rather, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So, I mean, it's a common theme that we see all through cinema all the time. It's not something new that we've seen, but it is really portrayed here in this film. I think the scene that you're referring to, Nick, is where at the very beginning they're trying to get the plutonium and then they abduct Luther. And Ethan has the decision to make whether to save Luther or to get out with the plutonium. And that was the whole premise of this whole movie, is that he chose his friend's life over the plutonium because he knew that at some point he could essentially get the plutonium back, but you could never get the life of Luther back. And
I was like, isn't there more plutonium in the world? I mean, like Back to the Future had plutonium, Hillary sold plutonium, like plutonium's everywhere.
Apparently.
I guess there's only 3.
I guess so. But that's some of the stuff that I kind of want to discuss here is some of the scenes in this movie. Like, one of the biggest things, and I've noticed that in certain movies, if you follow the podcast, there's certain things that just drive me absolutely insane and that I can't help but stress over the entire movie. One of the biggest things that I couldn't stand in this movie is how many chase scenes there were where Tom Cruise just drives through a steady flow of traffic.
I know, but he really did it. That's the crazy thing. He really drove through cars. I mean, obviously it was choreographed, but
obviously, but a lot of
that.
I don't know. To the way that I see the movie, I saw a lot of CGI, like stuff that you cannot doubt that there was CGI. Yes, a lot of it was choreographed, but I just think they did it way too many times. First he does it in a car, then he does it in a motorcycle, then he does it in another BMW, and then he does it in a semi-truck, and then he's doing it in a cop car. It's like, but yet every car that's following behind him crashes.
Well, that's just action movies.
Yeah, that's just action movies, Carlos.
But I think if you do it so many times in one movie, that's why a magician never reveals his secrets and he only does his act once for the generic audience. You can't do that particular thing every single... I mean, they did it almost 3 or 4 times in sequential order.
And bad guys are always a bad shot.
Yeah.
They never hit them. They're bad drivers.
Horrible. It's like the stormtroopers in Star Wars. They can never get their target.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get started. What are some of... So that's one of the things that I couldn't stand about this movie. But the action sequences were amazing. I really did enjoy them. What were some of the things that you guys didn't like, or some of the things that really stood out to you?
I think for me, kind of going back to going in knowing that he did all of the stunts, just kind of made it exciting. So for me, that made up for some of the really corny or predictable plot lines or lack thereof even.
How about when
for me it didn't even matter what the storyline was.
How about when he jumped off the building and actually broke his ankle, and they used the footage of him getting up and running across the building with a broken ankle? That's real. That's his real broken ankle.
Oh yeah, it made nationwide news that he had broken his ankle. Yeah.
I was dying when, this is something that was funny to me, that I was like, he's jumping off of buildings, he's doing all these crazy stuff, and then when he's at the window and he's like, why are you stopped? And he's like, I'm jumping out of a window. I'm like, why is he stopped? It's Tom Cruise. He just jumped off that building and ran through over here and balanced
all of a sudden that one building is the one that's causing the problem.
That one window that's one story jump, he couldn't do it,
But it's the one that broke his ankle.
Yeah, right?
I love the dynamic between Tom Cruise and Simon Pegg's character, Benji. I think that's comedy done right. It's kind of just blatant. It's just thrown in there. But they pull it off really, really well. And I'm not one for just slapstick kind of comedy. The way that Benji is like, no, make a left. Oh, wait, no. And Tom Cruise is like, are you sure it's a left? And he's like, whoops, I had this upside down. No, it's a right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I had it in 2D.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. It was just a stupid little plug to kind of break the tension that, where Tom Cruise is chasing down Henry Cavill. For you guys, I knew Henry Cavill was the villain from the get-go. I don't know why. Something in me was just telling me
I had the same feeling.
him.
Like
It's him.
even watching the interview before we saw it, I felt like he was the bad guy. So when they introduced him as being on the CIA, I was like, oh, I thought he was the bad guy. And then like when they revealed the subplot of, you know, Lark being one of them, I realized like, oh, I think that he actually is the bad guy. Well, and then I had seen the helicopter chase scene where he's like shooting at Tom Cruise. So I think I knew at some point he was going to try and kill Tom Cruise.
I think that whole switcheroo where they discovered that he was the bad guy because they got him talking to
Benji in disguise.
Yeah, when they got him talking to Benji in disguise, and they're like, "Oh, gotcha."
Yeah,
that was pretty cool for me.
Yeah, but again, I saw that coming. I saw
did too. That's one of the ones that I was like, I knew that he was wearing the mask.
Yeah, so Henry Cavill plays August Walker, and the thing about it is that August was saying the entire time, "I'm not leaving Ethan's side." And even in that scene right there where Alec Baldwin is sitting there waiting for them and tells them, you know, the game's over, this is it, this mission is terminated, Henry Cavill is just like, no, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. And then Ethan starts saying something like, oh no, well, you know, we're going to hand over so-and-so, but it's going to be Benji in disguise. You're going to stay here and watch him, August. That's where he saw his like, oh man, I can get Solomon Lane and get out of here. And then all of a sudden, that's where his demeanor kind of changed and was like, okay, yeah, I'll stay back. I'll stay behind. You know, and that's where I was like, this is where they're going to reveal that he is.
Well, because he would want to protect him because he was his ally.
So let me ask you this, because I'm still not 100% sure. Who is Lark? Was it Henry Cavill or was it Sean Harris's character?
No, I think it's Cavill's character, right?
So August Walker has a double identity, August Walker and then John Lark?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Lark is his alias.
I feel like they never really completely connect the dots, but it's kind of assumed.
They allude to that he hired someone to play him and, you know, that he was going to have him killed.
Because he was out there killing all the syndicate members, right?
Yeah.
And then we're left with the apostles.
I really liked one of the first scenes for me that was really like, okay, here we go, was the scene in the bathroom where Tom Cruise and him, they go get the Asian guy who they think is Lark.
Mm-hmm.
And that fight scene for me was pretty cool.
Oh, I love that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
Looking back at it, do you think he broke the computer on purpose?
Oh. See, that's where I was thinking too. I'm so glad we're on the same train of thought here, Marion. But that was a funny way of doing it where, you know, Tom Cruise, and it goes back to the scene early on in the movie where we're first introduced to August Walker, where his boss is like, you use a knife, I use a hammer, you know. Tom Cruise is trying to be graceful and all slick and spy-like and, you know, gets the needle out. He drops it, and Henry Cavill's first thing is, all right, I'm going to just bonk this kid over the head and just knock him out. He's, where's the needle? Where's the needle? I didn't need it. So that was pretty funny.
Those fight scenes, as enjoyable as they are kind of funny to me because I'm like...
How'd they rip the pipe out of the wall?
No, I'm like, if a dude as big as him just cleanly punches you in the face like that, you're gonna be out. Like, you're not fighting back. Like, I feel like I got a really clean punch on someone as hard as I could in the face. They're not fighting back.
I don't know. He didn't look too tough, but I guess when you're a ninja and that you can flip and kick
mind
and
over matter, they absorb it or something.
Yeah, but I'm with Marion on this one. How did he rip the pipe out of there? And how did he go through this wall? And, you know, and the thing is that they never end up with any major swelling, any black eyes, nothing. They get like a little scratch.
We were laughing in the very final fight scene when they're on the cliff. And we're like, a cripple fight scene. Here we go. You know, they're like hobbling at each other and like... Mm-hmm. Using whatever energy they have left. I'm like, every fight scene should be like this. They're like practically dead in every fight scene.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. One of my favorite scenes also in that bathroom scene is where Ilsa first comes into the bathroom and then they shoot the presumed John Lark. And then all of a sudden that's where Henry Cavill's character's like, can you still make a mask? And Tom Cruise just looks at him and says, I need a face to make a mask.
That's funny.
And then there's just blood all over the thing. And then Ilsa is over by them. Some random people come into the bathroom, and she immediately holds up Henry Cavill's face as if he's the one that had bled all that blood that was on the floor from his nose.
Oh, that was pretty funny.
So, but it also goes to show that people in that line of work, I guess, have to be good at improv.
Yeah.
So, what were some other scenes that you guys enjoyed from the movie?
I'm trying to think. I thought that the scene with, it wasn't necessarily super action-packed, but right after that, when Tom Cruise decides that he's going to pretend to be Lark and he goes into like that jazz club to meet the White Widow, I thought that scene was pretty cool. It wasn't like over the top, but you had kind of that sense of urgency, like, hey, something's about to go down. And I know that you like jazz, so you probably enjoyed that scene also.
Oh, I did. I absolutely loved it. I would love to go to a club like that someday. I think it's amazing. Minus all the killer, assassins in the audience.
I was trying to think. I just had another one in my head that I really enjoyed. I want to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
And this may be a little bit of a combination of, like, I don't really remember what had happened in the other movies, and also a little bit of, it's Mission Impossible, so the plot doesn't have to be great or fully defined. But I didn't really completely understand who Ilsa was working for or what was going on. I feel like that was kind of vague the whole movie.
Ilsa was introduced to us after Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, where basically she works for British intelligence, but she has been undercover with the Syndicate. And she's been undercover for so long, and they're trying to get so much information from this guy that her loyalty is kind of called into question. And so that's all covered in the last movie. And so that's where she comes into play. And so this Solomon character has so much intel on the black markets and, the terrorist organizations that every country wants to have their shot at him. They want to interview him. They want to get all the information that they can. And they also want to make sure that they don't have anything, that he doesn't have anything on them. So Ilsa is then charged with the task of bringing him back to British intelligence because Solomon was part of MI6. He was part of the British intelligence community. And so if anyone is going to have crippling intelligence about the British government, it's going to be Solomon. And if he gives that up to other countries, that's not going to be good for the British intelligence government.
Let me ask you this, Carlos. This is something that I enjoyed during the movie. I liked that throughout the movie and as a movie as a whole, you didn't get like the big Hollywood, like there's an agenda behind it. I feel like it was almost the opposite. Like they're saying, hey, the government can be like kind of corrupt and not what they appear. And throughout the movie, you're seeing everything that's going on and how there's rogues within the CIA. And I had the thought and the sense like, I wonder to what degree this kind of thing is really happening in the world and in the CIA and in the governments. Did you have that thought at all while you were watching the movie?
Absolutely. This is a theory that I've had for a very long time, even, before I really started to appreciate movies for what they are. I used to think, like in elementary school, one of the movies that you and I reviewed was Jurassic World. And I always thought to myself, what if this is the government's way of seeing how people would react if this really happened, because it is really happening? Does that make sense? So like maybe we really do have aliens at Area 51, and maybe we really are talking to them, but let's see how the U.S. is going to react if they really did invade, or, just to kind of get a glimpse of it. And then it kind of turned into, I don't know, that's just a crazy theory that I have in the back of my head. And I know it's completely and totally absurd.
Or
but,
is it?
Or is
or
it?
Is it?
One of the things that I told my little brother, who's been on the show before, who's a filmmaker, that I think that would be really cool, because I'm a little bit on the side of not conspiracy theory, but that I think
kind
that
of a
skeptic, and I think that the government is certainly capable of very evil things, and so a lot of these disasters and tragedies that have happened, like the Vegas shooting, like some of the Florida school shooting, where there's conspiracy theories going around, like could the government have orchestrated this? I think that it would be kind of a wild movie concept. Do something like that, like a school shooting or a mass shooting where it's like a behind the scenes, like, hey, yeah, the government actually did orchestrate this and that's how evil it is.
Oh, for sure. And you see television shows about this and conspiracy theorists, and I think that would be a really cool movie line. But this also gets me to thinking about this. I think one of the things that I noticed the most is that, Tom Cruise's portrayal of Ethan Hunt, he tends to be like the moral high ground for everyone. He is so incorruptible. He is so loyal. And the thing about it is that I know that you don't follow a lot of the Marvel movies, but he's kind of like that Captain America. He's so moral. Captain America is so loyal, and he's going to be the one that knows what's good for everybody, despite bending the rules. They never break the rules, but sometimes they need to bend the rules for quote unquote the greater good. My kind of thought process there is, who are these people to be making those judgments for the greater good? Yes, in the movies they are saving the world and it always works out in their favor, and that's great. But what makes them so special? What makes them the people to make those decisions?
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really cool, and a little bit when he's getting involved with the White Widow and he meets her brother and stuff, and they're planning that hijack. And it's kind of two instances. You see Tom Cruise thinking about it beforehand, and then you see it actually play out where he really didn't want to have to shoot the innocent cop. So you see how he plays that out in his head, and he doesn't like the thought of that. And then when it actually happens, when he's faced with shooting that woman cop who sees them, or shooting 4 of the White Widow's dudes, instead of shooting the cop, he shoots your dude. And so you get that high ground type of thought. I just thought that was pretty cool, especially with the underlying theme in the world today where cops are evil. And I thought that was a pretty cool statement to be making in a large Hollywood blockbuster.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I loved about this movie is that, and I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier on, while it is a political movie and political agendas and stuff like that, it wasn't so political like the other movies that we've been seeing, with the far left or the far right. It's just a good old-fashioned action movie with guns, cars, girls, and saving the world. So
no, I totally agree. I think that, it's political in the sense that, they work for the governments and they're dealing with these governments, the U.S. government and these governments and agencies of the world. But there were no political undertones.
There's no message behind.
Yeah, there's no message behind the movie. So I thought that was really cool.
And if there was, I didn't get it.
If there was, we didn't get it.
Maybe it was on our side.
Yeah, Mission Impossible, I don't think need it.
There we go. One of the other scenes that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to see what you guys thought. Okay, so we're in that hidden room in London or wherever they are, right? We've just found out that Henry Cavill is actually John Lark. He is the mole, right? And all of a sudden, he rips off the mask from Benji. He's walking out, right? And then Tom Cruise approaches him really smug, and all these lights and guns are pointed at them, right? And he's got his hands up. For me, I don't know why, I just kept thinking, this is just like Scooby-Doo, where he was about to walk out and be like, I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for you, Ethan Hunt. How did you find me out? And then, you get the whole Velma character that explains, well, this is what, and this is where this, and this is where that. That was all that was missing, was for Ethan Hunt to explain how or where he knew that this guy was the double agent.
That whole Scooby-Doo thing happened, when they first started doing the mask thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just love it. And I just thought it was hilarious. I was just waiting for him to I would have gotten away with it too. How did you know? And that would have just brought the whole Scooby-Doo theme to an end.
One of the things that was a little far-fetched for me, but in a movie like Mission Impossible, you let it slide just because it doesn't matter, is that after every chase scene, for some reason, they just always know where to rendezvous.
Yeah.
In these foreign cities, it's they've
got
got an escape plan for every single scenario.
When they're in the boat and he's like, and I need an extraction, and they know exactly which hole he's going to fall through for him to just land in the boat at the right time,
The perfect timing.
When he's almost caught by the cops.
Yeah.
And he cuts the hole in
cuts the hole through the web. Yeah.
It's just like him driving his motorcycle through heavy rush hour traffic and making it through without causing a single accident, except the people behind him didn't.
So Andrew showed us on YouTube some behind the scenes making of, and one of them was the motorcycle scene.
Uh-huh.
And so the motorcycle scene itself was just 10 times more wild because they show you just enough to see what's going on, but then they don't show you everything. And so when he's cruising through it, you're like, I can't believe he's doing this. And then it just gets even more crazy. And you're like, come, I think maybe half a dozen times
He really said out
throughout
loud.
the movie, I'm like, come on. Like, it's just wild.
And I would be like, remember, we saw, he actually did it. We saw the B-roll.
And I feel like the motorcycle scene was one of those scenes that you're like, knowing that he actually did that and seeing the little bit of the making of beforehand went a long way in the actual theater.
Well, one
I
of
feel
the
like
things,
the motorcycle scene, the building chasing scene, and like the helicopter scene.
Yeah.
well, I think one of the funniest things that I found in that motorcycle scene where Ilsa's trying to kill them, right? I don't know if you noticed this or not, but she had a little tether that her gun was attached to. And I just thought, she has granny glasses. You know how grandmas usually have those little chain links so that their glasses don't fall off and it hangs around their neck?
Gun.
It's a little tether for her gun, and I'd never seen anything like that. And I don't know why. I just kept focusing on that tether because the gun is there just dangling off of her chest. Just
Hey, well,
there.
had they done that in the bathroom, that guy wouldn't have dropped his gun. I think everybody should keep their gun tethered to them.
There we go.
Then that
Here's
guy
one.
doesn't get it.
Here's one that I thought was really funny in that whole scene. When they take Solomon away and they're driving, I thought that it was really funny that they just put him in the front seat like nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like no one's thinking of
A guy with a bagged
a guy
head.
with a bagged head. Apparently that's normal in wherever they were, Paris or...
Well,
Yeah,
it's
and
good.
again,
it's Paris.
you've got Henry Cavill, who's got to be over 6 feet tall. He's a huge guy. You've got Luther in the back with Benji in the middle. You've got these two huge dudes in this teeny tiny car. Tom Cruise is driving because, hello, it's Tom Cruise. And then you've got the
And
villain in
he's
the front
tiny.
seat. Yeah.
And
he's tiny.
Lane is not big too. Yeah.
So
I just-
Andrew was telling us that apparently Tom Cruise is like one of the best stunt drivers. Like for some of those scenes, they were trying to find like a great stunt driver.
He's actually known for being a good stunt driver. He's
Well,
basically a stuntman who
And the
acts.
director brought the producers Tom Cruise and they're like, what's this? They're like, it's the stunt driver. So I guess he's like a world-renowned stunt driver on top of everything.
And I think like the producers were worried about Tom Cruise getting injured, and they're like, no, this is
Well,
Tom
he's the
Cruise.
moneymaker. He's the one that's
Yeah.
going to break in all this, you know?
Right.
The movie itself was made with $176 million. That was the budget for it, okay? For the opening weekend here in the US alone, it made $61 million, okay?
Wow.
It has grossed over $89 million. And as of right now, worldwide, this movie has made $205 million.
Wow.
So, would you put that money milking cow in danger in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. These guys just
Well,
want to
and-
make more and more money.
And even when he broke his ankle, that puts the movie back a couple weeks. And then, what's her name? Ilsa got pregnant. So just like puts a big hindrance on what you can film and when.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One other scene that I want to talk about, I guess it's a given for this type of movie. So they have these 2 nuclear bombs. They're ready to go. You can't disarm one because then the other one will blow. And you can't disarm the disarmer because the disarmer will cause both of them to blow, or this, impossible movie plot, right? But the whole thing was that the timer was set for 15 minutes. That has got to be the longest 15 minutes I have
That's
ever
what I said.
experienced in my entire life.
I don't remember how long into it, but I turned to Nick and said, I think it's been 15 minutes.
The only
I don't think
place
it was. I
on...
bet it was about 15 minutes.
No, Nick. It was at least 30 to 45 minutes.
It's a
The
long-
only place in the world where time has no equivalence like that, where 15 minutes actually turns into an hour and a half, is when you're watching football. Or when you're watching any type of sporting event. At the bottom, there's a little clock timer going. It says 5 minutes left in this inning or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, it's been saying that for like
except for
basketball.
an hour.
Except for I think in baseball, the innings are the only sport that's not actually timed.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, okay, bad
Basketball's
example.
the one
You
that
know I'm
works.
not a sports
Quarters.
person, but you know
Quarters.
where I'm going with this.
Tabs. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I did like about this movie is that they had Wolf Blitzer on it. I love that whole scene with Wolf Blitzer, and I knew it was a fake, and I knew from the moment that they walked in and that they were trying to convince the terrorists that he had actually succeeded. But I liked having Wolf Blitzer, and I appreciate when movies have people from the real world portraying themselves in these things, you know? And for Wolf Blitzer to be having his show on the movie, you know, and him portraying this, I appreciate that type of realisticness that they try to incorporate that.
Well, I love that scene because, you know, even though it was a classic Mission Impossible move to pull the switch, you know, that it was fake, but I loved it. And it kind of like throughout the movie, you're like, wait, was Rome actually bombed? Like it kind of plays a trick on your mind that you're like, you forget that was actually just a tape.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question I have for you guys, and this is just before we start wrapping up here. In the final battle scene between Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise, they're in the helicopters, they crash, they're going down the mountain, whatever, blah, blah, blah. What caused Henry Cavill's face to melt? I don't understand. Was it just that he slid along the rocks?
I think it rubbed on the rocks.
No, when they were hanging in the helicopters, he tried to pull for something and he pulled like a line and it was like gasoline or oil from the helicopter burned on his face.
I remember that, but I don't think that would melt your face.
I was thinking
if it was like super hot, it would for sure.
I was thinking it was from sliding on the rocks, but that makes sense that it was.
I thought it was from sliding on the rocks too, but again, it's those little things that
he was screaming like he was in pain when it was pouring out on him, not just like, oh, I'm getting wet. It was like
no, it was like the burning hot gasoline and oil that burned on his face.
So that makes sense that it would be. But
I guess so.
Not, like catch on fire later. Weren't there like explosions after that? I don't remember.
That's the thing is, I thought that he had gotten some oil or gasoline, but I didn't see any fire like set.
Right.
You know, I didn't see his face set on fire or anything, and I never thought, oh, well, this is going to be scalding hot oil or whatever. Yeah. So I don't know. That was just the one thing where I was like, how did all of a sudden he become Two-Face from Batman?
Right. They're just mixing all the movies. Superman, Batman, it's all in.
I know. It was great. So, and I really loved it at the very end where they're all like, okay, we're going to snip the wire at 1 second because I know that Ethan will complete this. And they're like, why don't we just do it at 2? And he goes, because we'll never get that 1 second back. And it's like, well, if you're going to wait till 2, you might as well just wait till 1.
Yeah.
So, all in all,
it's gonna blow up anyway.
Absolutely. And you're in the blast zone, so. And the one thing that I didn't expect, and I'm kind of glad that we brought this up right as we're wrapping up. I didn't expect to see Julia again. When he lands in that little concentration camp or the little quarantine zone,
it was like a hospital.
Yeah, it was like a little,
a little mini.
Like
first and foremost, how the hell do all these people just get through all these quote unquote restricted areas with nobody questioning them? You've got Luther, you've got Benji, you've got Ilsa, you've got Ethan. I don't think
that was a restricted area. I think that
was
just
it was
like,
written all over.
Off.
It was all quarantined off. It said authorized personnel only. Where are the security guards checking IDs?
I mean, because they were leaving. They said they were wrapping up, so maybe it wasn't contaminated anymore.
I guess so.
Remember, her husband's like, "Oh, we're about done here. You can ride back with us. We're leaving." We're just packing up, you know?
And you know, you've got the scene where Tom Cruise is hanging from the elevator shaft and Henry Cavill is about to kill him and says, "Remember, I'm her guardian angel." I knew that something was coming up, but I didn't really expect it to come so soon. So whenever he turns around and he sees that it's Julia behind him in this little hospital zone, I was just like, whoa, you know, it gave me that little jolt.
Yeah, to me, and I guess it's just me because, again, I don't really remember a ton that had happened with the other movies. I didn't remember if she was dead or what had happened. And so it was kind of surprising, like within the context of the movie itself. But for me, it wasn't completely shocking. And I thought it was like a good wrap up. I didn't really understand like the whole plot behind so they were trying to use the nuclear bombs they were in a region where evidently if the bombs went off there, for some reason, there were some ice caps and it was for some reason that led to the possible starvation of that region. I didn't really put all that together, like what all was
so
at stake.
essentially, if I understand correctly, if the nuclear bomb went off there, the water would then be contaminated, and that water feeds all, if not most of all of Europe or something like that. So then everybody that gets their water from there would then be, subject to radiational poisoning, which would then lead to, starvation and death. I don't know. It's a mission impossible. That's the whole thing.
The mission was impossible.
There we go. Obviously not. It's just improbable. All in all, again, I thought it was a really great movie. We've discussed a couple of points, a couple of things that we liked, a couple of things that we didn't. I just want to retouch our scores here for this movie. On a scale of 1 to 10, after everything that we've discussed, Nick, Marion, is your score going to change in any way, shape, or form?
I'm holding true to 7.5.
Nick?
Me too. I'm going to stay true to my 8.5, but I will add the caveat that I do think that this is a movie that has to be seen in the theater.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In the theater, it's an 8.5. If you're watching it, renting it on iTunes in 3 or 4 months, whenever, it'll be still entertaining.
Probably
like I said, I think that we accidentally made the movie better because we chose, just because of the time, we chose the theater that was the super sound vibrating chair theater. So I think that added to it. But I think I'll say 8.5 in the Dolby theater with this crazy surround sound vibrating chairs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stick with my 8. I think it was an 8 movie all across. And I'm glad that you brought up this whole thing about the Dolby and the theater. I always go to the same movie theater. I always go to the Studio Movie Grill in Colleyville, Texas. And I just have to take a moment to give them a shout out because they are always just absolutely the best. We actually went to go see this movie, and I was going to try to watch the new Christopher Robin's movie about Winnie the Pooh. The people there at the Studio Movie Grill in Colleyville are always so sweet and it's just so nice. They know me, because I'm in there all the time. And they were just like, hey, we heard you started a podcast. Do you have any cards? They let me put cards out. People were starting picking them up, and we've then since jumped in subscription. So thank you so much to the people of the Studio Movie Grill in Colleyville. Shout out to you guys. You guys always make me very comfortable, and the food's not too bad. So I really enjoy it. Had to give them a shout out on this podcast.
The best thing about Studio Movie Grill is that it's also very close to Costa Vida. Shout out Costa Vida.
Shout out
Sweet
Costa
pork,
Vida.
shout out.
There we go. And if you guys want to become sponsors, we can talk later. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Goat Movies. I just really want to take the time to thank my guests, Nick and Marion Greco. Thank you so much for being on the show, guys.
Thanks
for having Carlos.
us.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you guys. And just remember that anytime you guys want to reach us, if you have a movie, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can always shoot us an email at goatmoviespc@gmail.com. Nick, what's that email address?
The PC stands for podcast. goatmoviespc@gmail.com.
Absolutely. You can also follow us on Instagram at goatmoviespc. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like this, so that we can keep this podcast going, and we will see you all next week with next week's movie. Thanks a lot, guys.
Dun, 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 dun.
Get a partner, then begin. Pull whatever pull.